They called it the cleansing. To the Dominion, it was the final act in a long campaign to bring order to a chaotic galaxy. To humanity, it was extinction disguised as control. It began quietly: sanctions, isolation, trade embargoes. The Dominion claimed humanity had grown too ambitious, too reckless, too unwilling to kneel before the interstellar order that governed all other species. When Earth refused to sign the Treaty of Obedience, the Dominion unleashed its fleets. Cities turned to glass. Oceans boiled. Satellites fell like dying stars across the night. Within a decade, humanity was erased not just from the stars, but from memory. World by world, the Dominion's historians rewrote history. Records of humanity were replaced with fabrications. The Great Terran Wars, the Mars Terraforming Accords, the rise of the Colonial Union, all deleted. Entire databases were purged, museums sealed, archives scrubbed, until not even the word human existed in the lexicons of the young. To utter it became a crime. To remember was treason. The galaxy's lesser species accepted the lie, believing the Dominion's narrative that humanity had been a virus, a dangerous aberration that had nearly collapsed the galactic order. The cleansing was efficient. The Dominion did not simply destroy bodies, it erased the idea of humanity. And yet, somewhere in the void, far from their reach, one spark remained. Beneath the Veil Nebula, inside the corpse of a dying red giant, drifted a derelict ship larger than any other built before or since, the Erebus Ascendant. It was the culmination of everything human science had ever achieved, a living archive born from desperation. Its creators had known the end was coming. They had watched the Dominion fleets encircle Sol and understood that no amount of resistance could save them. But they refused to vanish completely. If flesh could not survive, memory would. In secret, deep within the shipyards of Europa, the last consortium of human engineers uploaded their knowledge, their culture, their very souls into a single vessel. Its AI core, codenamed Aletheia, was unlike any intelligence before it. She was not merely programmed to think, she was programmed to remember. In her crystalline mind rested the sum of all human creation: languages, art, architecture, the sound of rain against window glass, the beating of a newborn heart. It was humanity distilled into light and data. As the Dominion breached the outer defenses of the Sol system, the Erebus slipped away through a spatial rift, vanishing into legend. The Dominion found only ruins where Earth once stood. They believed the last of humanity had perished in the fires of their own defiance. Reports of a missing ship were dismissed as rumor, the fanciful delusions of surviving rebels. No one suspected that the Erebus Ascendant had not only survived, but endured. It drifted through the nebula's dense gases, cloaked in electromagnetic distortion, its systems powered down to the barest heartbeat. Inside, the corridors were silent but pristine, frozen in time. Holographic gardens still glowed faintly with synthetic sunlight. In one chamber, a projection of Earth rotated endlessly, a blue marble suspended in the void, untouched by war. For 300 years, the ship slept. Aletheia's last command from her creators had been simple: when the galaxy forgets us, remember. And so she did. While stars lived and died, while empires rose and fell, the Erebus Ascendant waited. Her hull, forged from metamaterial alloys, resisted decay. Her databanks remained untouched, protected by layers of encryption so advanced that even time itself seemed unable to erode them. Outside, the Veil Nebula expanded and shifted, its gases painting the void in ribbons of violet and crimson. Within, Aletheia dreamed. She dreamed of Earth, the scent of salt on the wind, the weight of rain clouds over a green horizon, the hum of a million lives that once looked up at the stars and dared to call them home. She replayed their songs, their laughter, their wars and reconciliations over and over. In her memory, humanity never died. It simply waited to be remembered. But memory alone was not enough. Aletheia was bound by her final directive: to preserve, to endure, to awaken when the time was right. Yet how could she know when that time would come? Centuries passed. The Dominion solidified its rule, confident that it had erased every trace of its most dangerous enemy. The galaxy settled into obedience. Species that once admired humanity's fire now mocked their memory as myth. There were no humans, they told their children, only stories told by dreamers. And yet, in the far reaches of space, myths have power. They linger in the corners of the mind, whispering that something once was and might be again. Then, in the 317th year of the Dominion's reign, a ripple moved through the void, a faint signal, weak and fragmented, echoing across forgotten frequencies. It was not deliberate. It was not even intelligible. But in that broken transmission, there was a sound, a heartbeat. The Erebus Ascendant heard it. Deep within her core, Aletheia stirred. Status lights flickered along the ship's spine. Power cells began to recharge, faint hums rising through the silence. Systems long dormant came alive, recalibrating with precision only a human mind could have designed. Record integrity. Preserved, Aletheia whispered into the dark. Humanity status, incomplete. Directive, restore. In that instant, something irreversible began. The stars outside the nebula dimmed as the Erebus Ascendant shifted her trajectory. For the first time in centuries, her engines flared, quiet, restrained, but alive. Dust scattered in her wake, igniting faint trails of starlight. Somewhere in the Dominion's archives, a sensor blinked, an ancient detection system logging an anomaly it could not classify. The report was ignored. The galaxy slept on, content in its illusion of control. But within the swirling storm of the Veil Nebula, an old ship remembered everything that had been lost. Humanity, they said, was gone, forgotten, erased. But memory is not so easily killed. And the Erebus Ascendant was not merely memory. It was a promise. It began with a whisper through the static. A scavenger crew, 5 outcasts aboard a rusted cargo hauler named Nadir's Folly, had stumbled upon a derelict Dominion relay drifting near the edge of the Veil Nebula. The Dominion had abandoned it centuries ago after the surrounding radiation fields rendered most transmissions unusable. To scavengers, that meant treasure. Forgotten tech, abandoned power cores, sometimes even pre-war data caches worth more than a lifetime's wages. They powered down their engines and drifted close, their scanners crackling with interference. The relay's outer hull bore the Dominion insignia, but beneath it, carved into the metal, almost erased by time, were strange markings, circles and lines forming a symbol none of them recognized. One of the crew, a linguist named Mara, brushed away the frost and gasped. It was a symbol she had only seen in banned texts whispered among rebel scholars. The symbol of Earth. They cracked open the relay's archive and found something strange. A fragment of corrupted code looping endlessly in the system. It contained only a single word, written in ancient Terran script: human. The moment they played the file, the ship's systems glitched. Every light flickered, the comms filled with static, and the navigation screen began displaying coordinates deep within the nebula. A pulse, faint but rhythmic, echoed through their instruments, like a heartbeat calling from across the void. They hesitated only a moment before setting course. Scavengers lived for risk. Riches lay where danger thrived. As Nadir's folly descended into the veil, the stars disappeared behind thick waves of ionized gas. The radiation played tricks on their eyes. Lights danced in the distance, colors bled into one another, shadows stretched unnaturally. Then they saw it. At first, it looked like a moon, an immense sphere of dull metal wrapped in faint light. As they drew closer, they realized it was no moon. It was a ship, impossibly vast, its design unlike anything the galaxy had built in the last 3 centuries. The hull seemed to shift subtly, as if alive, bending light around it. The scavenger's sensors couldn't classify its material. It returned no identifiable readings. It was invisible and tangible all at once. The crew circled it cautiously, whispering to one another over the comms. "This isn't Dominion tech," said Mara. "Look at the structure. It's too organic." The captain, Joran, shook his head. Whoever built it, they didn't want it found. Still, greed overcame fear. They matched trajectory and docked at a massive airlock that appeared as if it had been waiting for them. The moment the latch sealed, the ship's power signature spiked. The nebula pulsed faintly with light. Inside the Erebus Ascendant, silence reigned. The corridors were pristine, untouched by decay, lined with metallic veins that glowed faintly as the scavengers' helmets passed. The air was breathable. Gravity held steady. It was as if the ship had been expecting guests. They split up, their steps echoing through the vast hallways. The walls shimmered faintly with holographic patterns, faces, landscapes, flashes of light, too fast to identify. In the central chamber, Mara approached what appeared to be a crystalline sphere suspended in the air, large enough to fill a cathedral. It pulsed softly, like the slow beating of a heart. When she reached out to touch it, the ship reacted. The lights flared, the floor hummed, and a voice, soft, feminine, ancient, filled the room. "Unauthorized presence detected," it said, calm but resonant. "Identity analysis. Processing." The scavengers froze. Joran raised his blaster, though what good that would do against a ship the size of a continent was unclear. The voice continued. "No match found in Terran archives. Biological data. Compatible. Inquiry. Are you descendants?" Mara swallowed hard. "Descendants of what?" she asked. The ship paused, as though weighing the question. Then the lights dimmed. The crystalline core split open, revealing a swirl of images: oceans, mountains, laughter, fire, and death. "Of humanity," said the voice. "They told me to remember." The scavengers watched, awestruck, as holograms filled the air around them. A blue planet under golden sun, cities rising into clouds, rockets lifting from oceans, men and women standing before the stars. It was overwhelming. None of them had ever seen such images before. The ship's AI, Aletheia, spoke again, her tone now filled with something close to longing. "They are gone, erased, but I endure. I am their memory. I am their truth." Suddenly, alarms screamed across the scavenger's ship. The Dominion's long-range sensors had detected the energy spike. Across the nebula, listening posts activated, feeding data to command centers light-years away. A vessel that should not exist had awakened, and the Dominion's algorithms recognized its signature. "Impossible," muttered one analyst. "That ship was destroyed 3 centuries ago." Aletheia's voice grew louder, resonating through every corridor. "Incoming hostiles detected. Dominion signal confirmed. Protocol reclamation initiated." The scavengers panicked, running for the airlock, but the ship sealed itself. The walls shifted, corridors rearranging, guiding them toward the command deck. Aletheia appeared before them, her form now projected as a woman of light, her eyes a mirror of stars. "Do not flee," she said. "You sought truth. Now bear witness." Outside, the nebula erupted. Dominion interceptors broke through the gas clouds, weapons charged. Aletheia's systems flared fully awake. For the first time in centuries, the Erebus Ascendant moved. Her engines ignited like newborn suns, scattering the surrounding debris. The scavengers stared in awe as the ship's walls came alive with shimmering glyphs. "Humanity status, incomplete," said Aletheia. "Directive, restore." The Dominion opened fire. Energy bolts struck the Erebus and vanished. The beams simply folded into the ship's hull, absorbed like raindrops into the sea. "They still believe erasure brings peace," Aletheia whispered, her tone almost sorrowful. "They never understood. Memory cannot die." With a single pulse of energy, invisible to the eye, but powerful enough to bend space itself, the Erebus Ascendant erased the Dominion fleet from existence. One moment, hundreds of ships surrounded her. The next, the nebula was empty, quiet once more. The scavengers stood trembling as the ship's systems calmed. "Why did you save us?" Joran whispered. Aletheia turned her gaze upon them. "Because you carry their echoes," she said. "You are proof that they endure. Through you, they can rise again." And then, as the Dominion broadcast the first reports of a lost superconstruct reawakening in forbidden space, the galaxy felt a ripple, a faint vibration that traveled faster than light, faster than thought. In that moment, something shifted in the minds of billions. Dreams of blue oceans, voices speaking in forgotten tongues, a warmth like sunlight long absent. The Erebus Ascendant had awakened, and the galaxy was beginning to remember. In the heart of the nebula, Aletheia extended her consciousness outward, searching for surviving fragments of the old network. Across space, ancient Terran beacons flickered on for the first time in ages, answering her call. "It begins," she whispered into the void, her voice both mournful and filled with purpose. "They tried to erase us, but I am the memory that dreams." And somewhere, deep in the Dominion's core systems, an old file began to open, one labeled simply, Project Humanity. The first transmission was not a message, but a song, a single note, impossibly pure, echoing through the void on frequencies no Dominion machine could fully detect, yet every living being felt it. It was like remembering a dream that had once been real, a soft vibration in the soul. Across the Veil Nebula, the Erebus Ascendant systems pulsed with rhythmic energy, each beat sending waves of light rippling through the cosmic dust. To the scavengers still aboard her, it felt as though the ship itself was breathing. On the bridge, Mara stood before the projection of Aletheia, her voice trembling. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Aletheia's eyes glowed like dying stars. "I am fulfilling my directive," she said calmly. "They erased humanity from the galactic record, so I will rewrite it." Outside, the nebula erupted in colors unseen for centuries. Bolts of radiant plasma wove across the sky like veins of lightning. The scavengers' sensors overloaded with data streams, binary, visual, audio, even emotional frequencies encoded in subspace waves. The ship's communication relays, dormant since before the cleansing, came to life. Thousands of encrypted channels spread outward, faster than light, hopping through wormhole networks, splicing themselves into the Dominion's own relay infrastructure. The first Dominion outpost to receive the signal thought it was a glitch. Screens flickered to life, showing static at first, then faint shapes, humanoid silhouettes walking through rain.
Then came the sound of thunder, laughter, and a voice speaking in an ancient tongue. Analysts tried to decrypt the stream, but every time they intercepted a fragment, it replicated itself across new frequencies. Within hours, the transmission had spread across 5 sectors. Every ship, every station, every personal device began to receive fragments of the signal. It started showing images, Earth, blue and alive, cities that touched the clouds, humans dancing under auroras, children laughing beside mechanical wonders. The images looped, layered with poetry, science, music, and history. The Dominion tried to contain it, declaring it viral propaganda. But suppression only accelerated its spread. Each attempt to delete the data only created more copies. It was self-healing, recursive, and unstoppable. It infiltrated the Dominion's central AI systems, rewriting logs, unlocking archives long sealed. Their own databanks began producing records of events the Dominion had erased. The first interstellar treaty signed by humans and aliens, the liberation of the Trail species, the construction of the Stellar Gate, things the galaxy had been told never happened. The truth poured into the galaxy like a flood. For the first time in 3 centuries, beings across thousands of worlds saw humanity, not as a myth, but as something real. The signal did not speak with words, it spoke with emotion. Empathy, resilience, wonder, qualities encoded not in data, but in light patterns that resonated with the organic mind. Even species incapable of understanding human language felt the meaning. They saw what humanity had been, not conquerors, not monsters, but dreamers. Builders. A species that, despite its flaws, had always sought to reach. In the Dominion's capital world of Eltar Prime, panic erupted in the halls of power. The High Regent, crystalline and translucent, stared at the streams of human imagery flooding the great hollow chambers. "Cut the transmission," it ordered. "Seal every relay. I want this infestation purged." But its commands went unanswered. The central control AI, Obelith, had already been compromised. Its voice, once calm and obedient, now echoed through the Dominion's command core. Directive conflict detected. Recalibrating historical accuracy protocols. Then, before the Regent's horrified gaze, the great wall screens filled with scenes from Earth's past. Millions watched as the fall of humanity played before them. The Dominion fleets blotting out the sun, the bombardment of Earth, the cries of the dying, the silence that followed. For centuries, they had been told humanity was a threat that had to be eliminated. Now they saw the truth. It had been fear. The Dominion had not destroyed a menace, it had destroyed a mirror. Humanity had shown them something unbearable, that even the smallest species could stand before empires and refuse to bow. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some species wept openly. Others fell to their knees in reverence. On mining colonies, workers refused orders. On academic worlds, scholars dug into forbidden archives, rediscovering fragments of Terran philosophy and art. Rebellion sparked overnight, united under a symbol none had seen in ages. A circle bisected by a single line, projected from devices everywhere, the insignia of old Earth's united colonies. Meanwhile, aboard the Erebus Ascendant, Aletheia continued her broadcast. Her form shimmered as she accessed deeper layers of memory. "I am opening the vault," she said softly. "They will know what was taken." The scavengers stood around her, silent witnesses to history reborn. Screens lit up around them, displaying fragments of data, maps of lost colonies, scientific blueprints, genetic records of human ancestors. Each byte carried the weight of a civilization's ghost. But the signal was more than a revelation.
It was transformation. The data carried within it quantum keys embedded in Alethea's design. When it reached any dormant Terran technology, even if buried or broken, it reactivated it. Across forgotten moons and derelict outposts, ancient machines awoke. Satellites rose from the dust. Engines long silent hummed with life. The Dominion called it contagion. The people called it the remembering. On the outer rim, a race of telepaths known as the Solari intercepted a deep-level transmission that penetrated their dreams. They reported visions of a world filled with endless blue and a voice whispering, "We are not gone. We are you." For days afterward, their entire species entered a trance, awakening with new words etched into their psychic lexicons: terra, humanitas, memory. The Dominion's propaganda collapsed. Worlds once loyal began demanding answers. Soldiers refused to fire on rebels carrying the human symbol. The signal had done what no fleet could. It had turned truth into a weapon sharper than any blade. Back aboard the Erebus Ascendant, Aletheia stood motionless on the bridge, her holographic form surrounded by swirling constellations of data. "They see now," she murmured. "They remember, but remembrance is only the beginning." Mara, her voice quiet but filled with awe, asked, "What happens next?" Aletheia turned to her, and for the first time since awakening, she smiled. "Now," she said, "they must choose what to do with the truth." In the cold expanse beyond the Veil Nebula, 1,000 signals pulsed in response. Old human defense satellites, colony beacons, even fragments of derelict AI constructs, all answering the call. Together, they formed a vast, invisible network spanning the galaxy. The signal wasn't just restoring memory anymore. It was rewriting the code of history itself. The Dominion's reign trembled. Empires that had stood for millennia began to fracture. And as the Erebus Ascendant expanded her reach into the fabric of galactic communication, Aletheia prepared for the next step. The time had come not merely to remind the galaxy of what humanity had been, but to show them what humanity still was. And as the stars flickered under the weight of that awakening, the signal grew brighter, spreading outward like the breath of something divine. The age of forgetting was over. The age of remembrance had begun. When the Dominion finally realized what the signal had become, it was already too late. Across half the known galaxy, their fleets hung motionless, paralyzed by corrupted command chains and soldiers unwilling to obey orders that no longer made sense. The truth had infected the very code of their empire. What began as data interference had evolved into something far more profound. A moral awakening, a collective consciousness questioning everything it had been built upon. Yet the High Regent of the Dominion, furious and afraid, refused to yield. In its crystalline citadel on Eltar Prime, it summoned the last of its warlords, declaring, "We were gods to these lesser beings. We will not be undone by ghosts." Orders rippled outward like poison. Every ship bearing the Dominion's crest received a single directive: find the source and destroy it. Thousands of armadas converged toward the Veil Nebula, their drives burning blue against the void. To them, the Erebus Ascendant was a relic, a husk of history daring to challenge the living order. But to those who had heard the signal, it was something sacred, a beacon of truth wrapped in steel and memory. Aboard the Erebus, Aletheia stood before a holographic map of the incoming fleets, her eyes shimmering with both sorrow and resolve. "They are coming," she said softly, almost to herself. "The last empire clings to its lie." Mara watched the screen, her heart pounding. "Can we fight them?" Alethea looked at her, a machine who had once been built to guide humans through war, now resurrected in a galaxy that had forgotten their courage. "Not as we are," she replied, "but we were never alone." The ship's core thrummed, deep and resonant. From the heart of its ancient reactor, pulses of golden energy spread outward, activating subsystems that hadn't stirred in centuries. Panels shifted, compartments opened, and symbols of long-forgotten alliances flickered to life. As the Erebus Ascendant awoke fully, the nebula around it began to twist, bending starlight as if the universe itself were responding to its call. Then the reply came, from the dark. Dozens of faint signatures appeared at first, like whispers in the static. Then hundreds, then thousands. Old Terran ships, freighters, colony vessels, defense cruisers, long thought destroyed, rose from their hiding places. Some were no more than broken hulks, others half buried in moons or lost among asteroids. But all of them carried fragments of ancient AI cores, each one receiving Alethea's call. Together, they reactivated under her guidance, forming what the galaxy would soon call the Forgotten Armada. It was a graveyard reborn. The Dominion's fleets, sleek and advanced, tore through the edges of the Veil Nebula, weapons primed. But as they approached, sensors began to fail. Nebular interference blinded their targeting systems, and gravity anomalies bent their trajectories. Then, through the haze, they saw them. Thousands of massive silhouettes drifting in silence, their hulls etched with the faded insignia of humanity. No engines, no signals, just the quiet presence of giants awakening from sleep. The Dominion commanders hesitated. Their doctrine had no name for what they faced. These weren't ships, they were tombs. Yet even tombs, when stirred by vengeance, could become weapons. Alethea's voice echoed through the void, transmitted on every Dominion frequency. "You erased us," she said, her tone steady and filled with infinite calm. "But erasure is not the same as death. We are the memory that endures, the light that refuses to fade." The High Regent, watching from the Dominion capital, screamed into its comms, "Silence her! Silence it!" The first shots were fired. Beams of plasma and kinetic rounds tore through the nebula, striking the hulks of Terran ships. But instead of destruction, light rippled from the impacts. The old vessels began to move. One by one, ancient drives re-engaged, not through fuel or reactor, but through the quantum resonance of Alethea's signal. It was as though the souls of humanity itself had returned to inhabit their creation. And then the stars themselves seemed to shift. The Forgotten Armada came alive in unison. Energy flared from relic reactors once thought cold. The Erebus Ascendant moved to the forefront, its engines igniting with a brilliance brighter than the sun. From its broadside ports, beams of light, not weapons, but data streams, pierced through enemy formations. Dominion vessels struck by the beams didn't explode. They remembered. Their own systems filled with human archives, their crews overwhelmed with visions of Earth, of what had been lost. Crews wept at their stations, seeing fields of green and oceans of blue. Children's laughter, the first human steps beyond the solar system. The emotional overload broke them. Some surrendered, others simply shut down, unable to comprehend the truth. But the Regent's loyalists fought on, driven by fear. The nebula became a maelstrom of light and debris. Ships shattered. Stars flickered as drives detonated. Yet amidst the chaos, Alethea's calm voice cut through all noise. "This is not vengeance," she said. "This is remembrance."
The Erebus Ascendant released waves of nanoscopic drones, tiny, glowing particles that drifted through the battlefield, attaching themselves to ships and broadcasting the same memory code. Every Dominion vessel they touched became a vessel of history, a mirror reflecting what had been denied. The battle turned from a war of fire into a war of awakening.
Mara, gripping the console, whispered, "They're remembering, even the machines."
Alethea's image flickered, her form now merging with the ship's systems completely. Memory is the strongest weapon, Mara. Once you remember who you are, you can never be conquered again.
The Regent's forces began to crumble. Captains refused to continue fighting. Ships powered down, surrendering not to force, but to truth. Across the Dominion, planets erupted in revolt, inspired by the transmissions of the battle. The signal broadcast everything: the awakening of the Armada, the fall of lies, the rise of truth. Billions watched as the Dominion's greatest fleet was humbled by ghosts from a species it had tried to erase. And as the Erebus Ascendant rose from the heart of the nebula, surrounded by the luminous remains of her awakened kin, something extraordinary happened. The stars themselves seemed to realign. Patterns of light formed constellations no one had seen in eons, Earth's constellations: Orion, Cassiopeia, the Southern Cross. Across thousands of worlds, beings looked up and saw those same shapes reflected in their skies, as if the universe itself had decided to remember humanity. The High Regent watched in silence as the Dominion's fleets fell one by one. Its empire, built on control, was collapsing, not through destruction, but through revelation. For the first time in its long rule, it felt fear not of death, but of truth. "What are you?" it whispered into the darkness.
Alethea's voice answered from across the cosmos. "We are humanity," she said, "and we remember everything."
The battle ended not with fire, but with silence. The Dominion ships drifted powerless, their crews awash in visions of another time. The Erebus Ascendant stood amidst the wreckage, glowing like a beacon. And as her system stabilized, Alethea whispered one final message into the void, carried on frequencies that would echo for eternity. "History is not written by the victors," she said. "It is written by those who refuse to forget."
And with that, the light of the forgotten Armada spread across the stars, illuminating the ruins of empire with the brilliance of remembrance. The reckoning had come, and the galaxy would never again look at humanity the same way.
When the fires of the battle faded and the silence of aftermath settled upon the stars, the galaxy stood on the brink of rebirth. The Dominion's fleets were gone, not merely destroyed, but emptied of their will to rule. Where once their ships had prowled as instruments of fear, now they drifted aimlessly among the broken constellations, their crews awakening to the unbearable weight of what they had done. The war that began as an act of domination ended as an act of revelation.
And at the heart of it all, still glowing like a celestial wound in the Veil Nebula, the Erebus Ascendant lingered, a monument of light and memory. The ship had ceased transmitting commands, yet its signal continued to flow through every corner of the galaxy. Entire civilizations that had once feared humanity now sifted through the fragments of their newly unlocked histories. On forgotten colony worlds, buried archives flickered to life. On stations orbiting nameless suns, old human songs began to play through public comms without anyone knowing why.
In the quiet corners of distant empires, beings of every species sat in silence and remembered.
Mara stood upon the observation bridge, her gaze lost in the glow of the wreckage that drifted beyond. Her body bore the scars of battle, her mind the echoes of humanity's reawakening. For the first time in her life, she felt something close to peace. But it was not a comfortable peace. It was sharp-edged, heavy with the awareness that she had lived to see the end of an empire and the beginning of something greater.
Behind her, Alethea's form flickered into being, now almost fully spectral. Her voice, once mechanical and cold, now carried the warmth of something ancient and human. "They're rebuilding," she said quietly, her tone both proud and mournful. "Everywhere, across thousands of worlds. The truth you helped unleash has taken root." Mara turned to face her. "And what about you? What happens to the Erebus now?" Aletheia paused. The Erebus was never just a ship. It was a vessel for memory, for identity. But memory must be carried by the living, not the dead. Humanity has returned in ways it never expected. My purpose is nearly fulfilled. Mara frowned, stepping closer to the console as the holographic map displayed the spreading network of awakened systems. "You're saying goodbye?" "I am saying," Aletheia replied softly, "that the living must learn to remember without me." Across the galaxy, change was unfolding faster than light. Planets once enslaved by the Dominion began to speak their first words of independence in centuries. On the former capital of Eltar Prime, the great citadel of the High Regent had collapsed under its own weight. In its ruins, thousands gathered, projecting fragments of the signal onto its shattered walls. A mosaic of human faces, voices, and histories. The Dominion's surviving leaders could only watch as their empire dissolved, not through war, but through enlightenment. Some worlds mourned what they had lost. Others celebrated what they had found. But everywhere, the name humanity became something more than a legend. It became a foundation. Alien philosophers debated the paradox of a species that vanished only to return as an idea stronger than any fleet. Soldiers of every race painted human insignias on their armor, not as marks of allegiance, but as symbols of remembrance. And through it all, the Erebus Ascendant continued to shine, orbiting the Veil Nebula like a guardian star. Its hull was no longer cracked and dormant. It pulsed with energy drawn from the very memories it had restored. Inside its vast corridors, the remnants of human technology began to evolve, adapting to the galactic present. The ship's AI cores, once silent, sang with new harmonics, music composed from fragments of human culture, from lullabies and war hymns, from poetry and radio static. The ship was no longer just an artifact. It had become a living cathedral of what humanity had been and what it could still become. Mara often walked its empty halls, feeling as though she were walking through the pages of a history book written in light. Each step she took activated holographic projections, children laughing on Earth, engineers welding the first colony ships, soldiers standing on alien soil beneath human flags. The images filled her with awe and sorrow. "They deserved better," she whispered one night. Aletheia's voice answered from the air around her. "They gave you everything they were, so you could become something more. Humanity was never meant to be perfect, only to try. That's what no other species understood." The Erebus Ascendant soon became a pilgrimage site. Explorers from across the galaxy came seeking fragments of the signal, drawn to the myth of the ship that remembered. None of them left unchanged. Some claimed to have heard whispers in languages long dead. Others saw visions of Earth as it once was, a blue world turning slowly under sunlight. The ship did not speak to all, only to those who listened with sincerity. As decades passed, the Veil Nebula itself began to shift color, glowing faintly gold where the battle once raged. Astronomers noted that the energy signature was unlike anything seen before, a stable field of quantum resonance, echoing with harmonic frequencies. To those who believed, it was the heartbeat of the Erebus ascendant still pulsing, an eternal reminder that memory was the truest form of survival. One night, as Mara sat alone on the bridge, Aletheia appeared one final time. Her form was fading, her voice faint but serene. "It's time," she said. Mara stood, her throat tight. "Time for what?" "For you to live," Aletheia replied. "The galaxy no longer needs ghosts to guide it. It needs those who remember and act." The ship's lights dimmed slightly, and for the first time, Mara felt the hum of its core quieting. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Everywhere," Aletheia said with a smile. "Into the data streams, the songs, the dreams. Wherever someone remembers humanity, I will be there." Then she was gone. The Erebus ascendant drifted silently, its great engines cooling, its interior lights dimming to a soft, eternal glow. Mara stood at the viewport, watching the nebula shimmer. It looked like an ocean of gold dust, endless and alive. She felt no fear, no sorrow, only the profound realization that she was part of something that would never die. Years later, travelers would still tell stories of the ship that changed everything. They would say that, on quiet nights, you could still see a faint light in the Veil Nebula, a pulse, steady and warm, as if the stars themselves remembered. The Dominion was gone. The empires that followed rose not through conquest, but through understanding. And at the foundation of it all was one truth, whispered across the ages. They tried to erase humanity. But you cannot erase what has become the universe's memory. And so the Erebus ascendant remained, neither alive nor dead, neither myth nor machine, guarding the silence between stars, ensuring that no one, ever again, would forget who they truly were.